I was there right by the TV, saw every moment of that moon landing. Oh, yeah. It seemed very real.
It seemed very real. Hey everybody, your buddy Basil here, and you are listening to the Joyspiracy Theory. Welcome back to another episode. We got a great one for you today. Today, we are talking to Lynn. We had a wonderful conversation, and, we talk about her growing up in beautiful Los Angeles in the 60s, living life with a mother with mental health issues and a father in the music industry, and her marriage to a guitar-playing, surfing, hippie man of God, and the life after that. Also, finding her way back to the church. I gotta say, I will be the first to admit I have a lot of criticisms with sort of the institution of the church, but I love it very much. And Lynn has a beautiful story of finding her way back to it. Also, she's going to be sharing a little about her own podcast that she's putting out, and I'll put a little sample of that at the end, so you'll get to experience that, and I recommend everybody go subscribe. It's a good one. I guess before we get into the episode here, I just want to remind everybody you can head over to patreon.com/thejoyspiracy-theory, where I'll be putting out another episode of Ask Bass, as well as some other bonus content waiting in the wings. And so if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, it could be about anything. I mean, the types of questions are broad that people are sending in. You can send those questions to thejoyspiracy@gmail.com, and I will put those in a bonus episode over there at patreon.com/ccnt. This podcast is supported by listeners just like you, and that's a great place to go. You can connect to other listeners, you can get bonus content, and hey, you can send me a little message there too. And if you haven't already done it yet, head over to Facebook, find The Joyspiracy Theory, and join up. I think we recently passed 2,000 likes on the Facebook page, so that's kind of cool. Thanks for everybody who already did that. Okay, well, I think that's about it. We're just going to get into it here, so I hope you guys enjoy this, because I certainly did. And like I said, we're going to be playing a little sample of her podcast at the end, so listen all the way through, and you'll get a little taste of that, and then you will be inspired to go off and subscribe to her podcast so you can get that. I think it's coming out twice a week, so that's kind of nice. Anyways, it's time, folks. Let's go.
Hello?
Hello, is this Lynn?
Yes, hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. Thanks for coming on the show today. I'm very excited. We had almost no technical problems, which is amazing.
That's fantastic. That's good. That's a good thing.
So, before we get into anything here, tell me what you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for another day to live with the Lord. A day is a gift. They're gifts from Him, and I'm just so thrilled to have woken up and have another day to be with Him.
Amen, sister. Yeah. It's just that fundamental thankfulness just to be alive another day.
Yes.
That, sometimes it hits you, and that's what you got.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very thankful to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And as I understand it, you've been listening to the show for a while, right?
I have to admit, it's my favorite show.
So you know how this all works.
Yes.
Okay, well, great. Well, I suppose we'll just get started. I'm very curious. Why don't we start from the beginning? So, where'd you come from? What was going on there in the early days, as they say?
Well, I was raised in L.A. for my entire life.
Los Angeles?
Yes.
Oh, Southern California girl.
Yeah. And I was born there, and I lived in West L.A. my entire life. And I remember house hunting with my parents when I was 5,
You
looking at all.
remember house? Did they involve you in the decision-making process?
Kind of, yeah. And there'd be different houses, and I was sitting around all day as they looked at house to house. And then when they found this one Spanish-style house, I was very excited about it as a little 5-year-old, and I guess that played a part. And so I lived in that house my entire growing up period.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you personally made the humongous financial decision for your parents to purchase this house.
I influenced them.
You
I think.
influenced them with your big baby girl eyes. And so that's when you're 5. I mean, so you were born in LA. Now,
Yeah.
you said West LA.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favorite things about this show is I just get to earnestly embrace how ignorant I am of geographical locations. But, as everybody knows, I spent my time in Southern California. What's the difference between West LA and like a regular LA? Is that the one with all the gay clubs, or which one's that?
I think that's North LA.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Oh, North Hollywood is what
North
that is.
Hollywood,
Yeah.
yes. And I had a wonderful time going to church there, but that's a different story when I was older. But yeah, and then there's downtown LA, and then there's the beach area of LA. And
Is West LA kind of a ritzy place, or?
it's right next door to Beverly Hills, but it's not like Beverly Hills.
So it's ritzy adjacent.
Yes, it's not at all like Beverly Hills, but it's next door to it.
Okay.
And so it was nice, kind of middle income houses.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of fun because, as everybody knows, we have lots of Midwest representation,
Yes.
some good East Coast
Yes.
representation, some West Coast representation, but I don't know if there's been just a straight up, middle class LA representation.
Right.
So this is great.
Yes.
So your parents, LA is not an easy place to live in the first place. And were your parents movie stars, or what was the deal?
My dad was a record producer,
Oh,
so this was the ideal place for us to be living in for his career. And that was just one of the best memories of my growing up, because he would take me with him to work often. And I'd get to meet all the quote unquote stars that he would work with.
quote unquote. Okay,
Because
so
it's
cryptic.
your personal opinion if
Oh,
you think
right.
they're good enough to be a star. And I'd sit there in the recording studio, and I knew to not speak, to be quiet, because they were making an album or
Yeah.
whatever. And it was just the most wonderful memory of my growing up years.
That's awesome. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Now, I've been lucky enough to spend some time in recording studios.
Yes.
It's a very, as a kid, that has to just feel like magical. I mean, they're very special places. There's like a lot of care.
Yes, right.
At least in the good ones, there's a lot of care put into sort of just the ambiance. A lot of the ones I've been in will like literally have like special almost stage lighting to just
yes.
like set a mood, which I
Yes.
guess is just kind of part of the deal.
Yes.
So that must have been pretty special.
From the earliest age, I loved all that type of thing. Sometimes, like when my dad was recording Paul Revere and the Raiders, I know that dates me, but
Paul Revere and the Raiders. I gotta say, I've never heard of that, but that is the coolest, most patriotic name for a band I have ever heard.
right. And like when I would be in their recording session, Mark Lindsay, who was the lead singer of that,
Dropping names.
he would make me tea and honey. And I saved that paper cup all through my teenage years. And my girlfriends would come into my bedroom, and they would know what that cup was from. And everybody respected that paper cup on my dresser. But I took this whole thing very seriously, and I was so thrilled to be able to meet all the people that I had met in my life when I was that young.
That's pretty
It
cool.
was so cool.
So
yeah.
Paul Revere and the Raiders, again, coolest. Now my official favorite band. Never heard a song of theirs, but officially my favorite band at this point. What are some other? I mean, would there be anybody that I would have heard of before?
I think you might have heard of this person, Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he would take me to the club where she was going to be singing that night, and she sang me her song, A Tisket, a Tasket.
Wow.
In this club. I was sitting at a table all by myself up in the front, and I just remember things like that. I wasn't too familiar with who she was, but I knew that she was somebody who was important and going to have a concert.
She's a nice singing lady.
Yes.
I mean, when you're young,
yes.
There's all sorts of magical people like that.
And I didn't know exactly what she had done, but she was a very, very sweet and loving person. So that was a memory that stayed with me my entire life.
That's very cool. Well, we're definitely going to talk more about all of that because that's very interesting.
Yes.
So your dad was in the music recording business.
Yes.
What about your mom? What was her deal?
Oh, she was a housewife.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
What a cush gig.
I know.
There's so many women who are mad at me for saying that. It's funny, people. It's a comedy joke. Okay. Well, that's okay. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah. You got to spend a lot of time with your mom.
Yes.
And how'd everybody get along? What was home life like?
My dad was just my heart. He was just the sweetest man you could ever meet. Mm-hmm. So I was close with him my entire life from the beginning. And he was kind of a very quiet man. He was Jewish and very quiet and thoughtful, but yet very funny. So every memory I have with him was beautiful and good. And then my mom, she was Italian, and and with a lot of teenage girls, there was trouble getting along with my mom during the teenage period.
Butt heads a little bit.
Yes, right. But
were you getting into trouble, or is it just like normal? Just, you're not the boss of me, Mom.
Both. It was actually.
Well, I mean, I guess that's normal.
It was both. Yes. She had problems of her own dating back to her childhood, and so, as a lot of mothers are, they enter into motherhood, and everybody who enters into motherhood is not in a perfect state with their personality and their psyche and what they've been through, and so there were struggles with her the whole time I grew up, and I tried my best to cope with it. But then when I reached the teenage years, it became harder because as a teenager, you've got your thoughts and your will.
You're
and
figuring out the world a little bit more.
Yeah, and you're kind of growing into who you are. And so if there's a person there that's not supportive of it, it makes it harder. Yeah. So that's what happened continually when I was a teenager. Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. Yeah. And as you know that on this show you're encouraged to share what you want, and if not, we can move on by. But you mentioned your mother kind of having some issues since childhood. I mean, can you go into that a little bit more? And eventually, how did that sort of work its way into your relationship?
Well, I studied it years later when I was grown up, and it turns out she had borderline personality disorder. Oh. And this is just from my reading many, many books, because it was such a strange thing what I had gone through with her. And it was very hard for her to get along with anybody. She had political friends, and she'd have them over a couple times. They'd be sitting on the sofa with her. I remember fights that they would get in over their tea. Then these people would leave, and I'd never see them again.
Oh, wow.
And with my dad, they would have fights, and I thought I was quite an old hand listening to their fights as a little girl. I was an only child. Yeah. And I would listen to these fights, and they were very upsetting to me as alone listening to these fights. Yeah. And so I think because of her childhood, she didn't really get along with anybody very well. So it makes sense that with her daughter, she didn't get along well either. And then when I became a teenager, it really started affecting me about the age of 15, 16. It was a really oppressive kind of atmosphere, and I didn't like it. And
Yeah.
so that's when we would have our fights,
Like she
starting
was-
about when I was 15.
Was she like controlling,
Yes,
like
yes.
too controlling?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
well, that's a hard time for any, teenager
Yes.
and parent
Right.
when, control issues start coming into it.
Yes.
The kids are finding out that they can have control
Yes.
of their own day.
Right.
But then, and this is a hard part of parenting. I'm personally not a parent to any
Yeah.
human beings right now. But, when my cats decide that they are allowed to have a mind of their own, we can sort of butt heads on that.
Right. That can happen, yes. When they're getting out of control. And
Yeah. And so, yeah, especially with a mother who, has some extra tension, I guess,
Yes.
with that kind of personal
Yes.
problem. Now, just for educational purposes, because I really don't know much about borderline personality disorder. I've talked to, there's been a few people on this show who have had experiences with it, either with themselves or with people in their lives. Do you have any more kind of examples of maybe how that would manifest, in case there's anyone out there who might not have a reference for that?
well, if anyone knows anyone who has it, every situation revolves around themselves and the love they can receive from their loved ones constantly. They need to be receiving love at all times. And if they feel like you have other interests that don't revolve around them, it's very upsetting to them.
Yeah.
And so as a girl growing up, that really became stifling by the time I was reaching 15 and 16.
Yeah.
And so I had such a strong personality that I had to overcome that in order to move on with my life. And it's really beautiful how that worked out. And I'm happy how it all worked out for me.
Well, I definitely we're going to get into that as well. Now, one last thing was this personality disorder, was this kind of known at the time? Like, had she been diagnosed? Did your father know about it? Was it sort of a known thing, or is it something you just figured out later on in life?
I figured it out later on in life because she never went for help, and my dad did not know any name of what it was. He was just there always trying to make peace and instill peace. He was a very peaceful, fun-loving guy, and so he did his best to cool her off when she'd get really mad if things weren't going her way or she wasn't receiving enough attention or whatever. Those things I wasn't really privy to when I was young, but he would always be trying to talk her down when she would get very angry. And so there was no professional help or anything like that.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
really
it's-
was hard.
It was a different time. I mean, I like
Yeah.
to think that nowadays, 2018, those sorts of things can be, relatively, well, if not easily, addressed or diagnosed, at least there's more access and there's less sort of taboo about,
Yes. Yeah.
investigating a problem like that.
Right.
That's interesting. Now, okay, to go back to your dad for a second, before we move on, I am interested because your dad was in the music industry, and it sounds like he was, fairly well connected.
He was, and everyone he worked with loved him.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember how much I loved him, but everyone he worked with just loved him and talked very highly of him.
Yeah.
And so it was so beautiful watching him in the recording studio with no matter who it was just like he was their oldest buddy.
Yeah.
And so on the other side of my life, there was my dad showing me the healthy way to live and be and find joy in
Yeah. It
all
sounds
your
like
relationships.
he was a little more like outwardly focused,
Yes.
maybe.
Yes.
Is that a good way to put it?
It was,
I mean, I don't want
yes.
to put words in your mouth.
Yes.
I'm curious because, people who listen to this show already sort of have an inkling, with the entertainment industry as a whole, there's lots of theories and rumors that you hear about some sort of untoward, activities in the industry or themes or ideas or you know,
Right.
Satanism. I don't know. I'll just come out and say it.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Did you ever see anything like that or hear anything like that?
He was very careful about what recording sessions he took me to. And so those kinds I know were weeded out,
Yeah.
and I knew they existed, but I was never going to be sitting in there with my dad.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
he took me to things in Hollywood like the Teenage Fair. There was a big, huge
The Teenage Fair.
You've never heard of the
I've
Teenage
never
Fair?
heard of the Teenage
It was
Fair.
so huge. There was people walking around from England and from every area of the globe, music stars, you know.
So it's music based. It's
And
not just like teenagers.
No.
Come gather
It was
and-
like all the teenagers would come from everywhere to hear their favorite rock groups and meet them, and that took place in LA, and it was so fantastic. And so he kind of took us there and got lost as we all wandered around for this whole
I'm
event.
sure he had all sorts of cool like VIP access
Yeah,
and stuff.
that was one of the things that was so much fun, is the VIP access during my growing up. And I'd take my friends, and oh my gosh, they were like lined up.
Wow. So
hoping
you
to.
were really like, you know, when you hear about like kids growing up in LA, you know, and dad's in the music business, and you think of this sort of like magical, I don't know, like, you know, living in it. Like, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you watch TV much, but there's a show called The O.C., which is kind of like a, I don't know, it's kind of like a dramatized, kind of silly version of what it was like to grow up in Orange County.
Yes.
And it's just like very ritzy and very, you know, these sort of situations that people across the world just dream of being in, meeting famous people and going to fancy parties.
Yeah.
So you kind of had that experience a little bit.
That was my life without the ritziness factor.
Oh,
I didn't
no
have the ritzy factor, but one of my best memories was one Saturday. He said, "You want to go swimming?" And I said, "Sure." So he took me to his friend's house, and this house was in Beverly Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this Olympic-sized pool in their backyard surrounded by trees. So I think I was about probably 11. And so I was swimming around in this humongous pool while he sat on the deck talking to his friend, somebody from the music business.
Yeah.
And into the deck walks Lucille Ball.
What?
And she was like my idol, because back then we all watched The Lucy Show every single week. And she walks in with curlers in her hair and sits down at the little outdoor table and is talking to my dad and his friend.
Wow.
And I was in the pool, frozen, staring, thinking, I can't be seeing correctly. This can't be Lucy.
Yeah.
And so then in a couple of minutes, my dad said, "Lynn, come here. I want you to meet somebody." And I came out of that pool, and I met Lucille Ball, and I could barely even stand up.
Wow, that's huge. I mean,
it was so beautiful. It was so
especially
fun.
for, you know, that time. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like meeting, I don't even know, celebrities, whoever. I
Yes,
mean,
it was so
Claire
fantastic.
Danes or someone.
Right. And so I met her. It was very quick because I was just in disbelief it was happening. And so then I got back into the pool and I wasn't swimming. I was staring at them the whole time, trying to take in.
Especially being that young, that's got to be kind of surreal, you know, because you see somebody on TV so often.
Yeah.
What was it like seeing her in person? I mean, I guess just dumbfounding.
She
Sounds
was
like.
so normal. She didn't have the clothes, the makeup, all that going on.
Right.
I was just I was trying to take in all I had seen, that she was just a normal person. So I'm in this pool alone, and then in walks Desi, her son. Oh my gosh. And every girl my age had a crush on Desi. And they had a singing group, Dino, Desi, and Billy. And everyone had a crush on this singing group. And so Desi walks in and jumps in the pool that I'm standing in. And it's a memory that will never, ever leave me. It was so amazing.
Wow.
And my girlfriends didn't believe me, but I told them it was true, and if they didn't believe me, that's too bad.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
So you really had like you were in the like LA. It seems like an LA dream almost.
Yeah,
Wow.
it really was.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, you mentioned that you were an only child. And, at least the popular idea of only children is A, that you can be really spoiled, and B, that it can be kind of lonely.
Well, the main thing I have to say about being an only child is it was never, ever lonely to me because I had a lot of friends. And I think most only children, well, I don't know if it's most, but many only children have a lot of close friends, and we'd have sleepovers and we'd always be together. So I didn't feel any sense of loss whatsoever.
Yeah.
Of not having brothers or sisters because I had friends that were so close that we were always together.
Well, that's good.
So I wasn't ever craving, to have brothers or sisters because in my life I was busy and I had these friends. So they filled
you're busy
in the gap.
hanging out with Lucille Ball and it's kind
Well, that didn't last long. But right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is you weren't lonely, but you're not denying being a spoiled little only child brat.
I think I might have gotten spoiled on Christmas morning.
Oh, yeah.
That was, of course, my favorite memory of my life, Christmas morning. And it was just a tree, a beautiful tree, which I just found mesmerizing. I would sit in front of that tree for days before Christmas, listening to Christmas carols and just being lost in the Christmas spirit. It was just something that overtook me every season. It was my favorite holiday.
And you just got all the presents, and
yeah,
that was your pinnacle of only childdom.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it was.
You owned the world at that point.
I think so. That's what you feel like when it's Christmas morning. Yeah.
That's fun. Now, what was kind of the spiritual atmosphere at home? Were you guys churchgoers? You mentioned your father was Jewish. Was that just kind of by descent, or was he practicing?
He never went to temple the entire time I grew up.
Okay.
Ever.
All right.
Ever. He never went to temple, and my mom was raised Catholic, and she never went to Catholic church.
Okay.
So I was not raised in a Christian household, and I
Sort
had
of a
friends that were.
So aside from specifically Christian, I mean, were there, like, did you know sort of religious background, or was there anything like that? Like, your mother have any Catholic remnants, or was it just sort of Catholic by association?
Catholic by association.
Okay.
And my dad never, ever spoke about God, ever, or didn't go to temple.
Yeah.
So there was no religion in my home growing up at all.
Interesting.
And so then...
You're too busy hanging out with movie stars.
I know, that's what it appears like.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I mean, you weren't under control.
It was kind of a very carnal atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was no God uniting my parents. They would fight a lot. And so when I was 14 and 15, that was a major part of my life, listening to their fights every night. And I would shut myself in my closet and stay in there till it was over with. It was really a hard time listening to their fighting every single night.
Yeah.
And it really affected me, which made having my friends all the more important to me.
Yeah. How do you think, you say it affected you? How could you put that into words?
It made me very, very sad.
Yeah.
Because I was a happy kid. And so it made me so sad because there was nothing I could say that could help them in any way. There's nothing I could do that could help them. But it was almost like they were addicted to not getting along. And so it just... I don't like fighting at all. Never have.
Yeah.
And so since I hated that so much, I would just hide from it. And it was really a damper to my spirit at that age. Well, because kids should be carefree at that age. And it was really a hard thing to live through.
Was that something like you were able to talk to your friends about? Could you talk to anybody about it, or was it not? It's just kind of something you held inside.
No, it was nothing. No, because when we would get together, everything was happy, everything was fun. It was just the polar opposite of what my life at home was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you were in LA doing your thing, living life, being happy when you were happy, and dealing with your parents at home when it was time for that. How did things go from there? You said at 15 and 16 you started not getting along with your mom. What happened next?
Oh, well, then that was 1969.
Oh, so the best movie of all time came out. The most, you got to see the wonderful broadcast Hollywood version of the moon landing.
Yes, I was there right by the TV, saw every moment of that moon landing. Oh yeah.
What was that like? That's a big worldwide moment.
It seemed very real.
It seemed very real.
I
you
chose
were totally
those words.
convinced.
I chose those words quite carefully. Yes, it seemed very real when I was there at the time, watching that whole thing happen.
Wow.
And I believed it at the time, and I was very excited. It was like a dream. It was just crazy watching that happen on TV.
Yeah.
Everybody's lives stopped at that moment, and everybody was watching that one thing happen. You know, it was wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so so it hit 1969, you watched the moon landing.
Yeah.
Now, as you were going through your teens, getting close to your 20s, what happened next?
Well, 69, when I was 16,
that's when you decided you would be an astronaut.
No, not quite. Well, not that kind of astronaut.
Okay.
That's when pot entered my life.
Oh, hey.
So my high school was a beautiful campus. It was a gorgeous high school, but it was a very strange high school because a lot of STARS kids had gone there, and there was a lot of drugs in my high school, and there was significant areas that were cordoned off, say at lunchtime, for pot usage. And
people, like officially, like the principal in like no-go zones?
Yes. Exactly.
You can't go over there.
Yes.
It's too crazy.
Yes.
We can't even enforce the laws.
It was behind the music building, and it was almost like there was a cordoned off area that you had to pass through to get behind there. And then once you got behind there, it was like you were walking through a cloud of smoke. And that was every lunchtime, every single day. And there were some teachers that were kind of around the perimeter of it. And nothing ever happened.
It was like a
people there.
It was like a monitored, like controlled drug zone.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And
is that just because like it was the type of place where there's the type of kids who if a teacher got them in trouble, it was more trouble than it was worth.
Yes.
For the school or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was just wild. And there was other smaller areas. A little stream ran down the middle of the campus.
And that's where everybody did crack cocaine.
No, that wasn't around back then. But,
okay.
And then there were the LSD kids, and I never did that or anything. But then there was the pill popper people.
Just dropping some acid at lunch at school.
It was just a very loose atmosphere being in the middle of LA in high school in 69.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
And so I did some of the downers before we would go back to class after lunch.
I mean, you gotta relax, Lynn. I mean, high school is stressful.
It's so stressful, I know. And the teachers just didn't really know what to think with all these kids coming in from lunch on these substances. But it was like the middle of '69 with everything that was going on in the world, and it just was so normal.
Yeah, in the middle
for
of
my
LA.
school. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
I'm really not exaggerating. It's just was the normal thing to do.
That is so funny.
Oh my gosh. It sounds crazy talking about it now,
Well, I mean, somebody could make a political argument that it's safer to have a controlled environment instead of sending the kids out on the streets to
Right,
do it.
do it in the safety of your school, right?
It's very libertarian of your school.
Right, yes. A lot of the teachers were very, very liberal too.
That's
Yeah.
so funny.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Okay. All right. So you joined the sanctioned marijuana club at school.
I guess you could put it that way.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to be totally upfront and truthful with
No,
everything.
that's what we're here
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it really was.
And so what? You just fell in with a group of kids, or like how did that happen? It was like the friends you were hanging out with.
Yes, and they were such close friends. It's just what we all did.
Yeah.
I just had a lot of really close friends in high school.
Yeah, I mean, you were just doing what was normal at the time.
Yeah.
It's not like you had a church you were showing up to on Sunday that was
Yeah.
at least presenting an alternative to
Right. Yes.
Weed Wednesdays at school.
Exactly. Yes. Right. That's what my high school experience was like. Yeah.
And so did you see any effect from that? I mean, did your grades stumble? Did you get in trouble with your parents, or was it just sort of just part of the deal?
At one point at home, life was just so dead there because my mom and dad didn't get along. It was just awful being at home because you'd come from this like Ferris wheel you're riding at school with all the excitement with your friends and all. And
I know you're being metaphorical, but it would not surprise me if you said there was a literal Ferris wheel at your school.
No, I don't think so. I don't have any remembrance of a Ferris wheel. There could have been, but I don't have any remembrance.
Okay, we'll stick with the metaphor then.
The memory's not too good with those type of instances, yeah. But so it was just so different. But one day things were just so dead at home. I don't know why this happened, but I just said to my mom, I smoke pot.
Wow.
I don't know if I was just trying to get a rise out of her. I don't know what was
Hey.
going on. And she just goes, "You do what?" And so I told her, and I said, "It doesn't affect me, and it doesn't affect my schoolwork, and it's just very enjoyable." And I just thought I'd let you know that. And
trying to be a good daughter and just keep you updated on my life.
I
I
think
want you to be engaged and be. Look, I'm not trying to hold secrets from you, Mom.
Right. And so she was in shock. It was like the most real conversation we had had in months. And
Interesting.
And I was being upfront. And so she goes, "Oh, well, wait till your dad gets home." And so we waited those long hours till he came home. And we were sitting in the living room. And she goes, "Lynn has something to tell you." And I go, "I smoke pot." And so he smiled. That was my dad's personality.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "Oh, how long have you been doing that?" And he was just really calm, and he didn't take it as the travesty that would end everyone's life in our house or anything like that.
Right.
And he was very loving and kind, and he just made some comment like, "I don't know if that's the best thing for you to do with your time," something like. But nothing much came out of it. And it was just more of the sideshow that was my life at home.
So was your mom was she trying to get you in trouble?
Yes.
So it was a little bit of
yes.
like a malicious thing, or she just didn't know what to do about it?
I'm sure she didn't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
And I think it actually calmed her down a little bit with his amazing attitude about the whole situation.
Yeah, it sounds like he really, I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not a parent, but it seems like at least as a kid, it was at least to be talked to like an adult is kind of what it sounded like.
Yes.
And not that he was condoning it, it doesn't sound like, but,
No.
just like, hey, well, it doesn't really sound like the best use of your time. I mean, I think that's a very, like, awesome way to respond.
Yes.
I think it's very, like, intellectually honest, especially since he wasn't, like, a religious man or anything, That's very interesting.
You can see why I loved him so much, just even from that scenario, going through that with him. He was the coolest guy. He wouldn't want me to be like stealing or robbing or lying or anything like that, but he was just he was full of love no matter what I was doing or confessing, like in that situation. And he was full of love. He was unwavering. He was like a strong ship that you could come to. And that's what I love so much about him. And he calmed the whole situation. And we came out of the living room and life went on. But it was very scary waiting till he got home, wondering what was going to happen. And it really shocked me how he dealt with the situation. Yeah. And it didn't make me want to do pot anymore. It didn't make me want to do harder drugs. At the very least, it could make me not do it anymore.
Well,
I mean, it was so powerful what he didn't say.
Yeah, see, that's what was going to be my question, was like, okay, that's a very cool response, I suppose, from your father, but did it actually, like, did it have an effect, or was it just kind of like a license to keep doing it?
It had a life-changing effect on me.
Really?
Because the desire to do the pot dissipated when that conversation happened. It was so beautiful because he gave me the freedom in myself of my own spirit to choose to do it or not. He wasn't going to be chasing me around the house trying to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
He was letting me decide for myself. And because of that trust and freedom that he instilled in me, I didn't want to do it much anymore. It was very shocking. I was trying to figure it out even then.
It's very interesting. And look, I'm not taking any theological stance here or anything, but it reminds me of in the Bible when the disciples are trying to decide, what you can do, what you can't do. All these Gentiles were being let into the faith, and there's all these traditions mixing and stuff that wasn't normal for the Christian Jews. And, they kind of just came to the decision like, hey, all things are permitted, but it's not all good, like kind of like, it's not necessarily mad, but there's probably better ways you can spend your time. That's kind of what it reminds me of. And again, I'm not trying to make any theological point here. I'm sure people have a retort for me. Just email it to gons@gmail.com.
Send all your mail to Gons.
Yeah.
That's right.
But that's very interesting. That just kind of clicked, made a connection in my head. But it's very fascinating to see that, parenting style kind of have an effect on your actions like that.
He had that effect on me at different times in my growing up when he would just calmly make a statement about something that I thought was earth-shattering, that maybe I had lied or something, anything negative. He just had this quiet, calm thing to say about it, which caused me to want to please him and not be his wayward daughter.
Right, right.
It's actually a beautiful thing.
He didn't do anything to sort of assume a separation between you.
Yes.
Because I guess, again, I'm not a parent. I know parents out there, nobody's really complained, but I'm very sensitive to, like, talk about parenting because I really don't know anything about it. But it would make sense that, when your child does something maybe that you don't agree with, you're kind of faced with a choice. And I feel like a lot of times parents may respond in a way that assumes a separation or assumes sort of a break in the relationship, where, if it's a rule that's laid down and you break the rule, suddenly now you're acting from a place of sort of broken
Yes,
relationship
right.
almost.
Yeah.
But it sounds like your father didn't speak from that place, and it had a really good effect on you.
Although my father was Jewish, he wasn't inviting me to come to God, but it felt that way. Because later in my life you'll see why, but it felt it was the closest I felt to God before I ever knew God.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And he didn't know the effect he was having on me. He was just being himself.
Just sort of an unconditional love type of
yes,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Which was the opposite of the love from my mom.
Yeah.
So during this time in my life, I started getting stronger and stronger because I took in his type of love. I drank it in. I was thirsty for it. I was hungry for it. Because I had lived with my mom's negativity for far too long. And so his love nurtured me in a way I can't even explain in words.
Wow.
It made me be a stronger person.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, he sounds like a pretty cool dude.
Yeah. He really was.
Okay, so what happened next?
So they changed some rules in my school district, and I graduated high school when I was 17, which was fine with me.
Nice.
Most of my most favorite classes were stage crew, radio, speech, everything revolving around
Like performance
yes.
or showbiz.
Oh, drama. Did I say drama?
No.
Yeah, drama. All that type of class was my favorite class, and so I had so much fun in my senior year. I had plays in my backyard at home. I charged a charge for people to come see it. We put on the Parent Trap in my yard with
Really?
snacks and the full Parent Trap. Of course, I starred in the 2 leading roles.
Yeah, of course.
Because it was my yard.
That's so funny.
And my friends were all in it, and the parents and brothers and sisters came and watched the play. But I just flourished in this realm, and I got to broadcast on the radio station in the morning, and between the drama and the speech, and then the ultimate, that shows that I wasn't a straight A student if my favorite class was stage crew. Oh my gosh. But I just loved all that type of class, and so my senior year was very, very much
So
fun.
did you have like dreams of going into showbiz? Was that your plan?
Yes. I didn't know how
Yeah.
it would
I
happen.
mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like that was the biggest influence in your life.
And at that point, my dad worked at CBS, and so I just thought I could just go there and see what jobs were available. And so that was truly my dream
Yeah.
that I wanted to do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you say it was your dream that you wanted to do. What happened?
Well, life happened. So then I graduated, and so then I ended up going to the Bryman School and studying to be a medical assistant. And
Okay. Well, hold on a second.
I know that does sound just the opposite of what.
So something happened to make you a little bit more pragmatic, I guess.
Yeah, making money, maybe.
Who influenced that decision?
I did, because I just wanted.
You just kind of changed your mind, you know? I mean, people change. That's okay.
It wasn't like it was a life plan that I was going to do that forever, but I saw that as a way to make money and get started.
Yeah.
So I did really well in the medical realm. In this Bryman School, I got straight A's in every single class I took. And so when I graduated, I was so proud, because I hadn't been a straight A student in high school, and then to go to this medical where we took x-rays, did blood tests, had to know all about the body, all the terminology and all.
Medical stuff.
Yeah.
Now, here's my question. Where was the weed room in the medical
It wasn't
school?
there.
No?
No, nothing
You
like that.
survived a school that didn't have a sanctioned
Yes,
drug zone?
Yes. And I was out in the real world, and there was nothing like that going on there.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was just, I just loved all of it. And so then it was time to graduate. So we graduated, and it came out that someone in the class had cheated. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but we had to take all our finals again. And then after getting A's on all the finals and having to take them all again, that was a scary thing.
Yeah.
And that was just a crazy thing. It was a very stressful time. So we all took all of our tests again, and we, graduated.
Yeah.
But that was a very hard thing. So
that's a very classic, like if you're watching a show from the 80s or something. Like I'm thinking of that show Boy Meets World. I don't know, where there would, it was kind of centered around high school or whatever. And there would be these like moments in the season where it gets very dramatic. Somebody cheated on the test, and there's a very deep moral lesson that we're all supposed to learn from.
Yes.
Anyways, I'm putting too
that
much.
was very dramatic.
Putting too much thought into this, obviously, but.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question. So your dad, he's a show business guy, obviously kind of helping to influence you in the showbiz realm and get you involved in that world. I mean, did he want you to go into showbiz? And I keep calling it showbiz because, it's kind of a vague term. So correct me if you have a better word for it.
The biz.
The biz.
Right.
The industry, as it was called when I was down there. Now, did he want you to go into that? Was he pushing for that? Like when you switched over to the medical stuff, was that a surprise to anybody, or what was that like?
That's another beautiful part of his personality. He was supportive of whatever I showed interest in. It was amazing. One week I could show interest in being a medical assistant. The next week, as it will come up in a few minutes, I could want to be a dental assistant. He was totally supportive of that.
Yeah.
He was supportive of whatever I chose to do. It was so, and I would stop, and it would blow my mind. Even then, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Whatever I was interested in, he was supportive of.
So it sounds like he just was a really good influence, because they talk a lot about, especially daughters and their relationship with their father, and how that can really color just a lot of experiences in life,
Yes.
Primarily like how you relate to and think about other men, and also God.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it sounds like you had a pretty good start to that kind of stuff.
Yes, it just took over. It overcame me. It was like the love of God was showing forth from my dad.
Yeah.
And he hadn't even come to God yet in his life. But he somehow had the non-threatening, loving, beautiful love for me that every parent should have for their child.
Yeah.
That just supports them, encourages them in what their interests are, and encourages everything they do toward their dream.
Yeah. How did your mother, did she have any reaction to your career choices?
She was silent then. It was, no, I didn't receive any encouragement from her. And at that point in my life, I was just soaring. I was just so happy learning what I was learning, and with the encouragement of my dad, I was just so happy.
Yeah.
I was just, that kind of encouragement in a child's life gives them no bounds whatsoever in their life, and enables them to do anything that they put their mind to.
Yeah.
With that kind of support, Yeah. It's really real, so strong.
And I'm sorry if I keep going back to your mother, but I'm curious because we're getting a really good idea of your father. And you said your mother was silent during that time. Was she Was it because she was just distracted by her own stuff, or what was she doing during this time? What was the
She was distracted by her own thoughts and her own self, and it was a letting go of her child,
Yeah.
and that was like probably too much on her.
Yeah.
It was just depressing to her.
Did you feel like maybe, like there was some resentment, or just because when you say silence, there's a silence that's like ignoring, or there's a silence that's resentful, or there's a silence, sometimes silence can be sort of encouraging.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
what, doesn't matter what I think, just letting you do your thing,
Yeah.
What was the feeling behind that silence?
It always struck me as more of a depressed silence.
Oh,
And so we didn't talk that much during those days. It was more of a letting go time for me.
yeah.
And so
Almost like you just kind of stopped trying to engage, or stopped trying to impress her, or stopped trying
yes,
to interact.
it was for my own survival.
Yeah.
When you come to that point in your life, it's for your own survival that
Yeah.
you go forth and grow, and I was so interested in other people my whole life. I don't know exactly what age it got intensified, but I was so interested in helping other people, and in whatever way I could, blessing them, and that started very young in my life. So that was my main concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't pining away, like trying to fix relationships that couldn't be fixed. I was growing up and
You're
moving
just
on.
looking forward.
Yeah.
Looking forward, moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
Now, I haven't heard you say anything about any boyfriends or anything yet. What's that? What was your experience with that? What was your relationship
Oh.
with other boys?
Well, in high school, okay, I swore before I did this interview I was going to be completely honest. I was a boy crazy girl. Okay, that's just the dead honest truth.
Yeah. Okay.
In high school, and so whenever dating started, I dated, and I had lots and lots of boyfriends in high school,
Uh-huh.
and I just loved boys
Yeah.
and dating.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, and that continued. I think I started dating maybe when I was 14 or 15. And so I had lots of very nice boyfriends. And some that I don't remember.
I was gonna say, it's probably the most nondescript thing I've ever heard. I had a lot of very nice boyfriends. End of story.
Some I don't remember, and
Okay,
some I
so
will remember my entire life.
Okay.
Yes.
So some didn't leave an impression,
No.
and just some did.
Yes.
Just nice boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else to add? I'm not going to dig too far. I mean, I don't know where else to go
Oh.
with that. But I mean, was there an arc? Was there sort of a development? I mean, you obviously, 14, 15, that's not necessarily an unreasonable time to start dating and learning what you're into and stuff like that, So there you go. I'm fine to leave it there if there's nothing else.
No, it was just a lot of dating, getting to know different people. And then this is the time period where I went to a Billy Graham crusade in L.A.
Speaking of boyfriends, ay.
And I knew who he was. Of course, I had seen him on TV.
Yeah, what age was this?
Age 16. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so this was
yes.
kind of in that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And I didn't know what to expect. And it was in the L.A. Coliseum.
Who brought you to a Billy Graham? Like, how do you end up there? You don't just accidentally show
You
up.
will not believe who brought me there.
Okay.
My mom.
I don't believe it.
I know. I know. Oh my gosh. Whoa.
Well, I mean, that is kind of weird. Okay. So tell me more about that. Why is that weird, and how did that come to be?
A few weeks prior, my mom was watching him on television, And my mom accepted the Lord watching Billy Graham on TV.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And she talked about it, and I was like, "Oh, good. I'm glad. I hope that makes you happy. I hope that's something that will bring you fulfillment."
Interesting. Wow.
And I really didn't know what it meant at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
So I went there, and it was in the LA Coliseum, filled to the rafters, and it was youth night. And Billy Graham was preaching mainly to the youth
Yeah.
about how life can be empty and lonely, but there's a deeper purpose to life. And that's why Jesus died on the cross for all of us and had such love that filled his heart for every one of us. Yes, for even you. And I felt like he was speaking to me. I was so convicted of my sins in my life, and I was so ready. I hadn't even heard of accepting Jesus. And this simple message that he preached that night, every word of it just penetrated me to the core.
Wow. That is very interesting because, I mean, especially everything considering your mother was going through and your relationship with your mother, and you were much more drawn towards your father, but your mother was really the one who, for some inexplicable reason, brought you to a Billy Graham crusade.
Yes, yes. And so then he came to the end of his sermon, and the song "Just As I Am" started being sung by the choir. And I came down with thousands of other teenagers that day. You came down when he said, "If you would like to accept Jesus, come down." And I accepted Jesus on the field with thousands of other teenagers that day. And it was so beautiful. People who I didn't even know came up and prayed the sinner's prayer with me. And I just felt such love down there on that field. And with thousands of other teenagers in 1969, in the middle of that huge Jesus movement, when everybody in the world was going crazy, I accepted Jesus. And I had no idea how amazing that change was going to be in my life.
Wow. You know, it's interesting because things like that, big coliseums and big mega preachers and thousands of people coming forward. Not to say that you don't see it anymore, but it really does mark a particular brand of Christianity today that some people, aren't too jazzed about.
Yes.
Some people call it inauthentic or sort of like a factory floor Christianity, but it seems to be really impactful to you.
When your heart is ready from all the experiences it's been through, all the sorrow it's gone through, all the emptiness it's felt at home, when your heart is hungry and Jesus is presented to you, you can't help but come to him. It's like the floodgates open and your heart opens to him. And I don't know how I even floated down all those stairs in the LA Coliseum, but it was what I had to do. And it changed my life forever. That one day, that one prayer. It was just the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Makes me cry to this day. Oh my gosh. Whoa.
And,
God.
Your mother was there and watched this happen, and she was newly Protestantized.
Yes, right. Yeah.
What effect did this have on your relationship with your mother?
Let's see. It made it a bit better, a little bit closer, which I was thankful for. So that was a good thing. And she was very happy because she had just come to the Lord a couple weeks, before.
Yeah.
So it turned out to be a good thing for our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in my adult years, I was able to help her at different instances. So it was kind of a healing. It wasn't like the kind of healing you hear about in movies or with a lot of people's stories, like some big, huge healing, but it was just enough healing that I needed to move on. And it really blessed her soul to know that I had come to the Lord.
It sounds like you finally had something in common.
Yeah, yes, yeah, that's true, yeah.
And it was at least enough to maybe avoid maybe developing a resentment or something. At least stopped it from getting worse.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's very
cool. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But you weren't necessarily best friends after that.
No.
Okay. So you and your mom had this great experience. You met Jesus. You found the Lord. It was kind of something you had in common. It was fantastic. And I'm assuming both of you, continued to live out your lives that way. I mean, your dad couldn't ignore that forever. Did he ever come to his senses?
Well, at first he didn't want us to speak about the Lord at all, and that continued for quite a while. And then the job came up for him to be producing Catherine Kuhlman in her studio, something she was going to do on an album, and I don't know the details of it. But so he met Catherine Kuhlman, and he was going there regularly to her studio.
Catherine Kuhlman.
Yes.
For those listeners who may not know, who is Catherine Kuhlman?
She was a woman of God who came to different cities and to LA in particular and spoke every few months at the Shrine Auditorium in LA. And
So like an evangelist lady.
Yes, and after her meetings, after she would preach her sermon, healings would take place. God would heal people of anything that they had come in there with. And I had even been healed of a dislocated knee when I went there.
How are we leaving out the miraculous healing?
There's so many little things I've left out. There's so many. But I was coming up the stairs to come into the Shrine Auditorium, and it had a few balconies. It was a huge place. Mm-hmm. And I had a dislocated knee, so I was coming up one step at a time, all those stairs. And I had it for a few weeks. And on one step, there was this kind of like a ping, kind of like a resonating vibration in that knee. And that was really strange. And it shocked me. But from that moment on, I could walk and go upstairs normally, walk and run.
So it wasn't like they brought you up on stage and hit you with a jacket or anything. No. You were healed. God was just doing it there.
It was beautiful.
That's awesome.
It was wonderful, yeah.
So you had this great experience. Catherine Kuhlman, did evangelist lady, and your dad was doing a recording for her, or what?
Yes, I never found out the details of what they were planning and talking about. So she met my dad, and I don't know what happened in their private conversations, but I'm sure she asked about him, and I know my dad, and he would have said, my wife and daughter really love your meetings, and they come to the shrine. I bring them there, and then who knows, Catherine could have said, oh, have you come with them? And the answer is no. And so he really came to admire her so much. And I didn't even know they had gotten that close. So the next time we were at the Shrine Auditorium, packed with thousands of people, she's up on the stage, and right before she's about to preach, she's like, and wait 1 second, I want to check something. And she talked into the microphone, and she goes, Bernie.
That's your dad's name?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Bernie, are you here? And everybody was kind of laughing, and she was waiting for an answer. And if you're here, come up to the stage. And I was just in shock, but I knew she was talking about my dad. I was up in a balcony, and I knew she was talking about my dad. And of course he wasn't with us, so she realized he wasn't coming up, and the meeting went on. And it was the most amazing moment. And so she really cared that he would come to the Lord. His whole family had come to the Lord, and I know she had started praying for him. And so that happened in 2 different meetings, and she thought he was there and that he would come up, and we told him, and he had this smile on his face. He was very private, and I don't know what their private conversations were like, but he just smiled when we said in the huge Shrine Auditorium she was calling out for him to come up on stage. It was just amazing. And so what happened after that point, after he talked with her, I don't know if she prayed with him or what happened. And of course, we were always praying for him to come to the Lord. And so he lost his job, his 2 jobs with the recording studios, with the record companies. And he lost every job he had. And he was like sought after. He was well wanted in that realm to be a producer, so it was a shocking thing. It was a first time thing that anything like that had happened, and so he was quite down about that.
He just suddenly, work was drying up.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All of a sudden. And then he got his real estate license, and the idea was he was going to get on a little plane and fly up to the Tahoe area and sell property to people. And he got his schooling and everything for that, went on the little plane, and that whole idea didn't work out. And so then that ended.
Sounds like a complicated way to make a living, but okay.
Yes, it really does.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah. So he was really dejected. Now, nothing like this had ever happened at any point in his life. And it was so weird seeing him down, because I never saw my dad in a down state. And one day he was sitting on this little sofa in my bedroom, and I walked in there and we were talking, and for some reason the words came out of my mouth, "Dad, are you ready to accept Jesus as your Savior at this point in your life?" And he was like on the brink of tears. I'd never seen him cry in my life. Well, I'd seen him cry once when his nephew passed away, but I'd never seen him any other time cry. And he was practically in tears, and he said yes. And so I got to lead him to the Lord that day, which was so glorious.
You got him.
After all those years of praying for him, and Catherine was praying for him too. She had a lot to do with that, and she was so thrilled. We found a way to contact her and tell her that he had been saved, and she was so thrilled when she heard that. And he, the remainder of his life, he did things to serve God, like pouring coffee for men at Full Gospel businessmen's conventions and meetings in the LA area, and things like that some would consider to be small things.
Yeah.
But the people that came to know him in those times just loved his loving spirit and how caring he was, and he'd pray for anybody who needed prayer, and he was just very simple and very loving, and he'd listen to all these guys at the Full Gospel.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful.
That's cool. So he kind of had a change of heart there.
Yes, and it changed his whole life till the day he died. He was serving the Lord and speaking and reading his Bible and making notes in it and sharing God with whoever the Lord brought across his path. It just makes me happy even telling that story, because we prayed for it for so long.
Yeah.
And
wow.
at first he was so antagonistic, but he turned into a beautiful child of God.
That's great.
Yeah.
So there was at least a period of time where you guys were all on the same team as a family there.
Yes, right.
That's great.
Beautiful, yeah.
Did your parents stayed together, or?
Yeah, they stayed together, and my mom got into more and more Christian meetings. She'd go to different towns and go to different events.
She was following the circuit.
Right, yeah, that's what she was doing.
Chasing the band around.
Yes, exactly. Nice. And then, let's see, in that period, my dad passed away, and so then my mom was alone, and there came the day when she was taken to the hospital, and she had a small heart attack, and then she was in assisted living, a really nice assisted living where she loved all the people. They were really caring people that would listen to her life stories, her life's adventures and all. And I would go visit her every weekend. And so she was really happy there. And then I got the call that she was in the hospital. And so I quickly went to the hospital there. It was about a half hour from my home.
Yeah.
And they had discovered she had the heart condition, and then she had cancer also.
Oh, no.
And it was like everything you can just imagine was happening at once. And her doctor had given her these little pills to swallow, which she could not swallow. So when I got to the hospital to see her, that was her main complaint, that these pain pills and these other pills they'd given that she couldn't swallow. So I just got so indignant, and I went out to the desk and I said, I want you to call this doctor for me right now. And so he was on the line finally, and I'm like, I'm her daughter, and this is not right. You need to give medicine that she doesn't have to choke down, and her comfort is of the main importance to me, and I know you can do this. I know what century we're in, and that she can't swallow these pills. And he was this most caring, loving person. I don't know what had happened, but he said, of course, and we'll give her shots and injections for the pain and all.
Yeah.
So that night, they began giving her the shots, and she slept for the first time in ages. And then the next morning, we got the call that she had passed away in the night.
Wow.
But
she got her night of comfort because
yes,
her daughter came in and stormed the castle.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And it was a beautiful thing. It healed a lot within her heart. She was like a little child at that point, and she wasn't full of a lot of the things that had kept her bound in her life. And the last few hours we spent together were really beautiful. And I felt really good because I knew I had done something really wonderful for her and helped alleviate her suffering, it was just a crazy thing that was going on, and I was glad that I could be there. So her ending of her life was a really beautiful thing between us, and I treasure that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So you guys kind of had a nice closure to your relationship.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so now moving through, you'd gone to medical assistant college, and you said something about dentistry assistant college, and so you were making your way through the professional world as a young lady in the must have been early 70s at this point.
Right, yes.
And so what happened next?
So my close friend from church where I had started going after Billy Graham, he was a dentist, so he needed a girl to run his one-girl office. So that was me. And it was really fun welcoming the patients in, running back and doing x-rays, assisting chairside, billing, doing every single thing on my own in this dental office.
You had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
was
you
really
enjoyed
fun.
it. You
Yeah.
enjoyed having all
So
that
much fun.
responsibility.
There were the times I would open the little glass window that separated my desk from the waiting room, and then there would be a cute boy that was my age who was a Christian standing there. And I met a couple people there working there, which added some interest into the day.
So you continued your dating.
Right, yes. So, and I just love that job. It never was boring, running the whole day. So it was a very interesting job.
Great.
Yeah.
Now you said you've been dating all these boys. You're so boy crazy. Did you ever find one to land on, or?
So then, within a couple years, we started going to a home-based fellowship in the LA area.
Who's we? You and your mother?
Oh, my mom and I, yeah. And we started going to this really good ministry, this really nice fellowship where there were a lot of young people. It was across the street from the ocean, and this Jesus movement was still in full swing. And so surfers were getting saved by the hundreds, and teenagers were coming in from the beach and being saved in this ministry. And it was a really great place. You just couldn't wait till the next meeting happened there. And then there was 3 people who led the music there, and oh boy, I haven't thought of this story in a long time. Uh, so it was coming up to be New Year's Eve, and everyone was told, if you have any songs you've written, if you want to share any music, we're having a big New Year's Eve party welcoming in the new year, let us know and you can sing it for everybody. And so I had written some songs about the Lord, and I told them I was interested in sharing it. And so it turns out that one of their singers that sings every Sunday morning helped me, and one of the lead singers, a girl, helped me. And so then on New Year's Eve, we sang the songs I had written for the group, and it was really wonderful and fun. And
so you were, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there more? Well, I just wanted to make a comment that, you know, this was, you're kind of, I mean, in a way, you're kind of living out your music biz thing here in the church.
Ooh,
you know?
That's so true.
Did your dad know that you were writing these songs and stuff?
Yes. And he was encouraging in his quiet way for that too, which was such a blessing.
And I'm curious, and I forgot to ask that, you know, did he have any opinions about you finding Jesus, you and your mom?
He was like, do not talk about this Jesus to me, because he was a Jew from the tribe of Levi. And so he was friendly, of course, but he did not want to be told about Jesus or have Jesus talked about to him. And I didn't try to witness to him. I prayed for him from the moment I came to the Lord, but I didn't ever try to talk to him about Jesus at that point in time at all.
Yeah.
And so he was very proud, of course, encouraging every moment that I had written these songs. So then I decided I wanted to learn piano. And so the one guy that had helped me get my songs out there on New Year's Eve just blurted out, I'll teach you how to play the piano. And it shocked himself that he said that. And so he came over to my house and started giving me piano lessons.
What a helpful young man he is.
He was just so helpful, yes. And so it was fun learning piano. And then there was this one piano lesson, and he went home that night after the piano lesson, and in the night, this is how he told the story. In the night,
I'm
God...
at the edge of my seat right now.
I know I'm telling it so slow. It's because I'm trying to remember every bit of it. God told him, that's going to be your wife in the night.
Okay.
And he had been looking for a wife, and he had done dating, but he finally came to the point, like, God, I'm just not dating anymore. You're going to have to bring me the one, because dating with all its ups and downs and everything, it's just too much. If you ever want me to get married, let me know who that one is. And that night, he felt my love in the spirit when he was praying. And so... the next day he goes, are you and your folks going to be home at 6? I wanted to stop by. And I was like, okay, sure, come over. And I didn't know what...
Smooth, dude.
I didn't
no
know.
reason.
I didn't know what was happening. And so I had anxiety all day. Like, what is this? And I thought, well, maybe he's coming over to say, I cannot give you piano lessons anymore. And I've come to announce that to you.
I need everyone to hear me.
I need everybody to
see me. I cannot do it anymore.
And I was just filled with such angst all day, wondering why he was coming over.
How did you feel about him? I mean, you were boy crazy. Did you have a little crush on him? You did. You were sitting a little close on the piano bench. You were playing a duet, and accidentally your pinky would kind of...
How do you know these things?
Match. I can see it.
Oh, gosh.
So you were, I mean, in these piano lessons, you were kind of giving them, you were interested.
Yeah,
you were accidentally hit a wrong note and go, Oops, why don't you put my finger where it should go?
Yes, well, he was one of the people that led the music in the ministry, and so I did have deep admiration for him.
Yeah, that
I
was
did.
hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yes, you said it correctly. Yes, right. And so I thought he was a really neat person. And so finally 6:00 rolls around. The doorbell rings. I open the door, and he's standing there wearing a suit.
Subtle.
Which made my heart stop. What? Okay, who has died? He's coming to tell us someone has passed away.
What a weird move.
Why is he wearing a suit?
It was a different time.
So if I was nervous before, I didn't even know what nervous meant till I opened that door and saw him standing there like this. So I asked him in. So we're all in the living room, Mom and Dad and me. So he's nervous. And I went, what's he nervous about? Why is he in a suit? What's going on? What is this? So he goes, can we pray first?
What?
So we said a little prayer. Okay.
This is a grand gesture.
So
I mean, I'm poking fun at him, but I mean, this is a grand romantic gesture, I hope.
So the prayer's over. Okay. He says, I feel like God has given Lynn to me to be my wife. I almost passed away in that moment. My dad was turned white, and he was in shock, and my mom was sitting there smiling.
Your dad.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
he
my
said,
gosh.
I feel like God has given Lynn to me to be my wife. Okay.
You're speechless. I've never seen this.
I mean, I suppose it's romantic. Very bold. I'll say bold.
Very, very bold. Yeah. I mean, he hadn't even gone through the thought process. Like, what if she says what or no, or what is this all about?
I mean, he really laid himself out there. I mean,
know.
that's
God.
I'm. It's certainly not not typical. Not a typical move.
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
A little bit on the eccentric side, but very bold.
Absolutely.
I'll give him that.
Yes.
Very bold.
So what happened the next moment after he said that sentence was that I got up and ran out of the room.
Wait, okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems like as good of a reaction as any.
Okay, I got up and ran out of the room because I was going to my bedroom to retrieve my small Hallmark calendar, which I had written in a few months before then, and I didn't want to write the words out in case someone found my calendar, and it was a secret thing, so I had written in there DIKIWL, which stands for Day I Knew It Was. Because on that day, months earlier, God had impressed me that he would ask me to marry him. And I didn't even know him then, but I was in the fellowship, and we knew each other just as people in the fellowship. And I was dumbfounded when this happened, and I thought, well, Lord, if this is you, I'm going to keep this. If this ever happens, I'm going to look back on this, and I'm going to remember that you so strongly told me this on this day. And that's I put the calendar away. And it was just a really warm admiration I had for him in a Christian kind of way. It was nothing,
Yeah.
no kind of attraction or anything like that at that point. I hardly knew him, but I was kind of impressed that he loved the Lord so much. So I came running in with this small calendar, and I showed everyone, and my mom and dad were dumbfounded, and he was in shock that months earlier God had told me it was him. And we were all in shock at that point in time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, now it sounds like his sort of bold move was just a part of the plan.
It was an amazing moment.
Wow.
it was just amazing. So
And he walked out the door and you never saw him again.
so then we just spent hours talking about everything, like, when did you write this? How did this happen? And I was explaining all of that. And I said yes at that point. And my dad said, Lynn, is this what you want? And I said yes. And my mom was just smiling, and they were as shocked as I was. And so then they left the room, and we spent hours talking about it. And so then we were engaged from that point on.
You got engaged that day?
Yes. At that point, I said yes. I said, yes, I want to marry you.
Wow.
And I ran and got the calendar to show that God had told me that he was going to be my husband months before.
Yeah.
And I put that away, and I brought it out at that point. I thought that was a perfect point in time to bring that out. I think you're in shock.
Yeah, I've never heard a story like this.
It was truly amazing. And so then there were all the months planning our wedding and going places, hiking around by the ocean and going to the meetings and going out to eat and going all over dating.
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 Now that you were engaged, you were able to date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that how it's done?
Yeah, of course.
So we dated, and then a little over 3 months after that, we got married. And
how old were you right now?
Okay,
At that point?
20. I was 20 or 21, I think. Yeah. Very young bride now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of normal at the time,
Yeah,
I
it
guess,
was.
right?
It was younger back then, yeah. Yeah, so then we got married. And we were married for 40-something years. And we had a son and a daughter. And for many of the years we served the Lord we had an at-home prayer meeting. And he wrote books, Christian books. And we led music for different fellowships and raised our children.
How many children?
We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And that was a glorious time in my life, raising those 2 kids.
Yeah.
I just love them so, so much. And watching your kids grow up is such a gift, just watching who they turn into and who they become. And it was a blessed time. And when we were newlyweds, we moved to Hawaii.
Oh.
Because he was a surfer, and every summer he had gone to Maui. So he said, you want to move to Maui? And that just sounded like the biggest adventure to me. And I said,
great.
Sure, yeah. And I loved it from the moment we got there. It was just so glorious, so beautiful. And the weather was amazing. And
did you learn to surf?
I had already learned to surf when I lived in Southern California. My girlfriend lived across the street from the ocean, and we would go out at 6 a.m.
So you were kind of a surfer bum too, huh?
Yeah, we surfed a few times with her brother's surfboards. And so that I had done that on the mainland. But it was just so idyllic living in Hawaii. We joined another person's Christian meetings, and he had this little church in his backyard under the papaya trees and the palm trees and the music, and it was such an idyllic time. And people came to the Lord in this little backyard prayer meeting. And then with the Hawaiian culture, you go to their house and you leave with rice cookers and baskets of food. They're such a giving people that when you simply go to their house, you're leaving holding fresh fruit and food they've cooked. It made such an impression on me. They're the most loving, giving people. And so we just had an idyllic time. And then at one point, we moved back to the mainland because we wanted our children's grandparents to see them. But then we loved Maui so much we moved back to Maui, and which all
Couldn't
worked out
stay
fine.
away from the island paradise,
Yes,
huh?
I know. Back and forth and back and forth. And so it was just a beautiful time in our life. And then we somehow moved back to the mainland, and our kids continued to grow up.
Yeah.
Boy, that's condensing the story.
Well,
Whoa.
hey, I mean,
Whoa.
yeah.
And so they grew up, the kids grew up, and it was just a glorious time raising them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, they sound pretty special.
Yes.
What are they like?
They're just, my son is so loving. He serves the Lord, and he's a nanotechnologist. He's a PhD.
Wow.
He went to
Whoa.
Stanford. Yeah, he went to Stanford.
That's very impressive.
Yes, and he's fun, and he's got a sense of humor, and he's musical, and he plays the guitar. And my daughter is a cop.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Wow. That is a fun collection.
Wow, it's amazing how their lives turned out.
Yeah.
And my son has a son and a daughter, and my daughter has a daughter and a son and another little daughter who's almost 10. So
Are they
precious.
in the church as well, or?
So my son is in the church. My daughter is not at this point.
She's busy busting perps.
Yes. Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Boy.
Well, you seem very proud of them. That seems like a cool bunch.
Yes.
You did a good job.
They're such beautiful people.
Yeah.
I love them deeply.
That's
And always will.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
A mother's love,
Yeah.
There's no end to it ever.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention that you were married for 42 years.
Yes. Okay, so after all these years, our kids were grown. They had their own families. And this one day came, and my husband said, "Could you please sit down on the sofa? I want to talk to you." So I sat down, and he brought in this envelope, and he handed it to me. And it's hard even talking about it. And the envelope was a divorce. And I was in shock when I read it. And he said, after 40-something years of marriage, "I want a divorce."
Wow.
And I was absolutely in shock. I think I sat on that sofa for approximately 6 hours before I stood up. That's how much shock I was in.
Wow.
And I was looking at all this paperwork that he had drawn up with our lawyers. It had taken him weeks to do this. And I had no inkling that this was going to be happening.
Wow. You didn't see it coming.
No.
You didn't see you weren't having problems. There's no.
Well, now when I look back on it, yes, there were problems occurring.
Yeah.
But when you're married that long, even if you have some problems, you feel like that you have time to work on them.
Yeah.
Not
right.
be presented with a note from your husband wanting a divorce, written by lawyers.
So it wasn't like there was even hey, we're having issues. Like maybe we're both, whatever, not happy, or we're arguing too much, or we're not on the same page. Let's work to fix this or something.
There wasn't even arguing. So that wasn't on the table. There wasn't arguing. It was kind of like in the last years of raising the kids, we had grown more and more distant. And my husband didn't want to go to church anymore, didn't want to be in a church. It was kind of like, that's organized religion. I don't want to be in there. That's kind of what his attitude was.
Right.
And to me, it was my lifeline, because I loved having friends and knowing about people who needed help and giving love to others and receiving encouragement and love from your Christian brothers and sisters. All of that was very important to me, things that just were my lifeline. So when he said, I'm not going to any church, you can go if you want. It was like that. You can go out there if you want to go. And so I fell into this sad state where I wasn't going anywhere, and he was growing more and more distant. And so at one of the last points of the marriage, my daughter was getting divorced from her first husband. So my precious grandkids, I didn't want them to be harmed by the divorce she went through. So I got this novel idea one day that if I went to this Christian psychologist that I had heard about, maybe I could get some tips on how I could strengthen them while their parents went through this divorce.
Your grandkids.
Yeah, my grandkids. Yeah. That I could be there for them and strengthen them and so they won't suffer through this divorce, because divorces are horrible, messy things for the kids involved.
Yeah, certainly.
So I thought this was a fantastic idea, that I was going to get some tips from this Christian psychologist and go to a few meetings with her and be able to help my kids through this divorce. So I had my few meetings with her. I think it was for a couple months. And I thought I had learned some helpful things to say to them, and I shared with the kids, and I thought it was a very helpful thing. And then I had learned, after he presented me the divorce papers, that he was really scared to start dating out in the world, but he thought he might start dating her because at least he knew who she was.
Your psychologist?
Yes.
Was he going to the psychologist too?
No.
So you go to a psychologist to learn some tips to help out your grandkids. Your husband serves you divorce papers out of nowhere, which is kind of reminiscent to the way the whole thing started, if I may. Sort of an atypical, very direct, just no questions, no discussion. It's just sort of throws it at you. And says he wants to date your psychologist.
Wow.
Wow is right. That's what I'm saying.
Wow, but hearing someone else say it, it just hits you. Whoa.
Oh, gosh.
Whoa. Oh, my. Yes, exactly. Wow.
How did he meet this? I mean, this is again, the only word I can really say is bold. Very bold move.
I feel that there's some deception somewhere. When I'm in heaven, we'll see all things and know all things, and I'm going to be pretty shocked when I hear how this actually transpired. But something was very strange going on. He had said, I want to date you, and she had said to him, not till you ask Lynn for a divorce. You can't date me till you've told her you want a divorce. So he did that.
Well, that sounds like a reasonable request.
Oh, gosh. This whole story is so wild. I just can't even believe this.
Oh, my gosh.
So he couldn't date her till he had asked me for a divorce. So that's when he gave me all that paperwork. And so then now he was allowed to date her. So now that I knew, and so when I learned he wanted a divorce, I said, well, I'm not staying with you if you don't want to be married anymore. Of course I want this. This is crazy. I don't even understand all of this that's going on.
But, yeah, that's crushing.
And
I
don't want to be married to you if you don't want to be married. And so that's when he went to her and he goes, I'm free now. Okay, now I can date you. And so then they started dating, and 3 months later they were married.
3 months again, huh? He's a quick operator.
This 3-month thing, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, wow. A little quick. Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to. I make light of things easily, and I don't want to make light of that necessarily, because that's incredibly crushing and really especially having it be such a surprise with no warning, no attempt to
Yeah.
work things or make things better.
Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, what was the fallout from that?
Um, he wanted out of the marriage and to be with her. That was his main thing. Because at that point, I would have been willing to discuss it, talk about why things had gotten so bad, why I had there was just no communication. Well, see, I didn't know he had met her and wanted something with her at that point. But at that point, I would have been willing to go to counseling, but he already wanted her. So
I mean,
that
if the paper's already drawn
yeah,
up, I mean, there's forethought. There's like a lot
yeah.
of there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. You don't
So
just
I had the sense, at least, to know that this was a done deal. So I just said, just go. I'll sign these and go. And so he goes, so you can stay in this house, or I'll stay in this house. And I had the foresense to say, no, I'm moving out of this house with all its memories, and I'll just take that house that's up the hill that we looked at once before, because we were looky-loos. We always looked at real estate. And if we drove by anything that was cute or in a nice location, we'd go look at it if it was for sale. And we had gone by this house, and so I said, no, I'm not staying in this house with all the memories. I'll take that house up there. And he goes, okay. And so the next day, I started packing.
wow.
And in a few weeks, he had done the real estate deal. I brought my boxes up here. And that night, I was sitting in the living room, surrounded by my boxes. And the most overwhelming sense of happiness, I'm going to cry again in this interview, overwhelming sense of happiness was bubbling up from inside me, and I was so surprised. And I knew it was from the Lord, and I knew it was God just saying, I'm with you. I'm very near to you. You don't need to feel alone, and I'm going to bless you. Wow. And it was one of the most beautiful moments of my entire life.
Oh my gosh.
In such a moment, which should have been the most dark, down moment that I was going through, I was crying tears of joy because I couldn't see the whole situation very clearly at that point. But guess what? I was now free to go to church. I mean, that sounds like a small thing to most people, but it was almost like I was in a prison of his disbelief and whatever bad memories he had from church. And I was, and here's the operative word, free now to seek the Lord, to serve the Lord, to worship with other Christians. It was like I was in a foreign country and I hadn't been allowed to worship the Lord or be with other Christians. And it was such a overwhelming joy to have that restored in my life. Everything just came to me so clearly in that one moment that you've been through great, great sorrow, but you're my child and you're free from this now, and I'm going to bless you. And it was one of the most amazing moments I've ever had.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, any marriage ending is traumatic, but that's such a traumatic way for a marriage to end. And, you know, sitting in a new house that is unfamiliar, surrounded by your stuff in boxes, away from everything you've known for 40 plus years.
Yes.
I mean, that, to some people, I mean, that's like a rock bottom, new page turning chapter in life filled with mystery and the unknowing of how, to
Yes.
learn to
Right.
do life without what you had before.
Yes.
But you were hit with the spirit of freedom and possibilities.
It was the most beautiful feeling, and it just flooded my soul. And I didn't know what was coming, but I felt God filling the room I was in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is incredible.
Very, very beautiful moment.
Yeah. And, and that's a beautiful moment. And especially, moments like that mark occasions through our lives.
Yes.
That they kind of stand as like an Ebenezer, like a
Yes.
marking unto the Lord,
Yes. Yes.
But the thing with those moments is that there's always the next day.
Mm-hmm. Right. The next
and
morning.
you're starting a whole new life.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was the most exciting experience I can ever describe. More exciting than anything I've ever known.
Yeah.
So the next day I was just praying, and I was full of expectancy, and I didn't know what God was going to do, but his spirit was just all over me when I woke up. And so I was very happy unpacking and moving into my new house.
Now you say that you were very happy. Was there, I'm sure there were mixed emotions. It couldn't have been straightforward. Was there a part of you that was afraid of this sort of, at least just the unknownness of what's to come? Hey, I'm not trying to tell you what you were feeling. I'm just,
Yeah,
or
don't
was
bummer
it just,
my happiness.
no, I'm not trying to be a buzzkill here, but
Right.
no, if it was just straight happiness, that's amazing.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was. It was amazing.
Wow. And now you get to go to church.
So I visited the church that I wanted to go to, and I felt nothing but love in that place. And I started meeting people, and it was as if I had never been in a church in my life. It was that special to me. And I'd been in many churches with great people and all, but after going through such a stifling marriage that every day was getting deader and deader,
Yeah.
knowing that my husband wanted out, made every hug, every happy moment in church all the more meaningful.
Wow.
It made it more powerful than it even was.
Yeah.
It was just amazing how God multiplies blessings to you in such a time.
Yeah, and I had gotten the feeling before. You had mentioned you had really craved and thrived on helping people and being connected to people and friends. Even since you were a child,
Yes,
friends
yeah.
played a huge part
Yes.
in your life, and were incredibly important to you.
Yes.
I'm sure that was an amazing experience that it seems like you hadn't really gotten to experience, or maybe sparsely in your 40-year marriage.
Yeah. There were times in the 40-year marriage where I had opportunities to help people at different, and those were the times that I was the happiest, completely happy being married, when I got to help families or people or women. I was in women's ministry, and those kind of things were just so beyond wonderful when I got to help an unwed mother. I started helping them have their babies when they were unwed mothers, and different situations, counseling, things like that, and seeing people receive help and become strong in the Lord, and helping them with their marriages, of all things. I knew how a marriage should be, and I knew how both partners should be acting and relating to each other in a marriage. And so even that kind of thing, every victory that I could help a Christian achieve was just such a exciting, beyond any other excitement I've ever known, moment for me. So this was all just a new thing for me when I found this church to go to. It was like a very needed therapeutic thing for me to do at that point in my life.
Wow.
It was
That's
beautiful.
amazing.
Yeah.
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 That's great. Well, that's very good. Now, I mean, I'm not sure. We haven't put any dates on any of this. How long ago was this?
Getting up, almost about 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So
about.
Relatively recent. Then. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So I mean, in a way, you're still kind of, you might still be discovering life outside of that marriage, huh?
Yes. It's really beautiful because God will bring somebody across my path that needs something. It's all different types of things. And a lot of the times I can provide that thing for them, which is such a blessing. It affects their spirit. It affects them spiritually.
Yeah.
When they have a need, like a physical need or a spiritual need, and someone can help them.
Yeah.
Navigate through that situation.
So it sounds like that's really rewarding. Like you've kind of devoted your life to helping people.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's just, I don't even have a human word to describe how gratifying it is. It's so wonderful. It so fills your heart and soul with happiness to be sharing the love of Jesus with another person in a tangible way where they need it.
Yeah.
It could be things like food or encouragement, or friendship, or it's just time or help. Things that people everywhere desperately need that is so hard to find when you need it.
Yeah, you know, and it's amazing when we discover just how much we can get out of helping other people, and even in small things, it's so easy, especially in America and just any really materialist society, where people, it's easy to fall into the pattern of what's the next step of progress for me? What's the next, a lot of times material step that I can make to improve my material well-being or to achieve my goal, And when we get a chance to help other people in one way or another, and it can look all sorts of different ways, it's almost like a little interruption in how we, almost robotically seek, self-interest.
Yes.
And taking, again, even the smallest moment to help somebody else just interrupts that sort of robotic self-interest seeking instinct that we all have. And it can kind of be disorienting or decentering in like a really positive way.
Yes, absolutely.
So I really admire that.
Yes. It's just amazing just going through your daily life. Every morning I pray that God will show me who has a need or who needs to know God's love. And he is always faithful when you pray that way and he shows someone who needs his love or needs a certain tangible thing.
Yeah.
And their reaction when they get it, they're restored. Some of them are on the brink of losing their faith, and they're restored, and their faith is restored with just a simple thing to encourage them. It's just a simple fulfilling of a need that encourages them. And it's just the most thrilling thing to be a part of their lives.
And a lot of times you're like the answer to prayer. I mean, like you're, in a way, not to grandize it too much, but in a way you can be sort of the hand of God in somebody's life, and being the one that God uses to answer prayer in that person's life. To be used by him in any way. And then one of the most exciting things that happened after the divorce was one morning I woke up and God was like, get a piece of paper and a pen. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I wrote this devotional, and that's hard to explain. That's not even a good word.
I can't think of a way to describe it. It's a few paragraphs of encouragement, and I couple it with a beautiful photograph
Yeah.
to look at, and it's based on scripture. And I have written one of those every morning, and I haven't counted for how long. I don't know if it's a year or whatever, but I've written one every single morning when I've woken up. And I have a big mailing list now, and I send it to everyone on my mailing list, and it's really ministered to a lot of lives. And it's such a blessing hearing from them when it ministers.
Wow, so you're getting the chance to really speak into a lot of people's lives.
All of the things that are in my heart flow out, and I capture them on paper, and I send it out every morning.
Wow.
And now I'm planning on putting them all in a book,
Wow.
a devotional book,
Hey,
and publishing
there
a
you
book.
go.
Yeah.
Very enterprising young lady you are.
So I'm very excited about that. I'm looking forward to who it could touch, just having that available for encouragement. Because in this world, if that's something we all need, it's encouragement.
Yeah.
Every day. And it's funny, some people get more blessed by the written word, and some get more blessed by the verbal word. And there's a whole other group of people that are extremely blessed by the verbal word, and I'm just reading one of the devotions that I've written.
Yeah.
And audio really gets to a lot of people, because a lot of people, especially people my age, have grown up with audio their entire life, and it affects them in a very deep way. So some people get affected by the written word, but many people, and especially younger people, get affected by audio, and that just goes in easier, and they can accept God's word and God's encouragement that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, maybe because I've listened to your audio. It's a podcast, but it's very short. They're very short little things.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll play one at the end of this episode so people can get a little idea what you got going on. And when we start wrapping up more, we'll I'll put the link in the show notes so everybody can go find it and subscribe and stuff like that. That'll be awesome.
That'd be great.
Some people being blessed by your work.
My hugest joy is hearing how people got blessed, what they did, how it affected their life. It's the hugest blessing. I just can't tell you the joy that floods my soul hearing people when they write to me or send me an email telling me what they got out of anything that I might have said or written. That's my hugest blessing, is seeing lives changed and strengthened by the word of God.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
We're gonna put the links. We're gonna get more people to go check out your stuff. So stay tuned till the end. People will give it to you. And I think I'll play one of your things at the very end of the podcast.
That's good.
You bet. So, now we're at an hour, close to 2 hours here. I know time flies by, huh?
Yep.
So here is my question for you, and it wouldn't be a TJT episode without it, which is, hey, if you're listening to this show and you also listen to Canary Cry Radio, right? And Canary Cry News Talk.
Absolutely.
I've seen you on the Facebook. You got to be a special type of person to be into the type of stuff that we talk about, right? Mm-hmm. Where in the world along this journey that we just got that you shared with us, where in the world did you get into the types of stuff that we talk about?
That is really easy to answer.
Oh, thank goodness.
As a young girl, I had my transistor radio. We all had a transistor back then. And we didn't have headphones and everything modern like today. We had a transistor. And every night when I went to sleep, I would be listening to things like the Bob Grant Show and other shows describing...
Wow, old school.
Really, really. It was like the beginning of this whole type of thing. Things like conspiracy theories and alternate universes and little subjects
UFOs,
like that.
Roswell was a big thing back in back then.
The Illuminati.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
And from, I don't know what age, I had my transistor under my pillow. I didn't get as much sleep as I should have in my life because I was listening to all of the people who came on and talked about all of these different things. And in my house, there was closets of books and documents about all this sort of thing.
Wow.
And so from the earliest beginning of all of this, I was involved in this.
So you're really a veteran of the genre there.
Yes, it was a very small group at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now it's such a big group comparatively, And I know these things are true.
Somewhere along the line, you found out about podcasts.
Yes. Oh, gosh.
And heard about Canary Cry. Or which
Yes.
was the first show that you found?
The Joyspiracy Theory.
Oh, that was the
yes.
first one, huh?
Yes.
Wow, you don't hear that very often.
Wow, and I just love all of them. They're what I've been listening to since I was quite small. I can't remember what age I was, but they're what I was listening to under the pillow my entire life. So I was so happy to find them, to find that genre exists, not old recordings, not repeats, fresh from young people who know that this stuff is true. Mm-hmm. And I've known it's true for my entire life. So it was like finding friends.
Yeah.
And it was just the most wonderful thing to find, and I'm hooked.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad we got you on the show then.
Yes.
Now you're a broadcaster yourself.
Whoa. I love it. Oh
that's
my gosh.
So interesting. Wow. Okay, well, you know how this show wraps up. You know how we land the plane here, but before we get into that kind of stuff, what was there something on your heart that you wanted to share before we start landing the plane? Something that was just burning when you found out that you're going to be on the show that you want to share with the masses?
Just for others to continue listening to all the different shows and all the variations that you put out, because they're full of truth. And to love your family with your whole heart and do the best you can every day. And even when there is no love, you give love. And give love till you have no more to give. Do the best you can every day. And God will bless you. He's blessed me every single moment since I have accepted him. And it's very exciting to wake up every morning with God in your heart, knowing Jesus as your Savior, because every single day there are new blessings in it, new people to meet and love and speak to. And it's a glorious, glorious life when God is the head of your life.
Amen.
That's what I would say. Yes.
Amen,
right?
sister.
Amen. Yeah.
Okay, well, as we start to land the plane here, I need to know, do you have any furry friends?
No, I had poodles for years. Little white poodles. I had always wanted one, so then when I was a grown-up, I was like, I can go get a poodle.
Poodles.
But I don't have any
poodles.
now. Yeah. But I can't say that I won't have one. I'm allergic to cats, but I have just recently found out that there's a type of cat that doesn't smell like a cat.
Doesn't smell.
And
well,
that's
you're
kind
allergic,
of exciting.
so you're looking for a hypoallergenic cat.
And I didn't know that existed, but a friend of mine had one, and I was amazed.
Oh, yeah.
So
there we go. We got to hook you up with one of those hypoallergenic cats. You can get a sphinx cat, a naked cat, if you want a little scary goblin running around your house.
I don't like those naked ones, but I do like the ones with blue eyes that I've discovered.
The Russian, what are they called? Russian blues, I think, are hypoallergenic.
Ooh.
Okay, we'll start a campaign to get you in the cat club.
Yes, the cat club. I know. Yeah.
Okay. Now, also, I gotta admit something to everybody listening to the show. I haven't been doing my juicing. I know I've been running on just spoiled fuel. I need to get back to the white, hot, burning jet fuel of juicing.
Oh my gosh.
What do you got going on? Are you into anything funky like that? You do the Whole 30 or how do you take care of yourself?
I've done the Whole 30, and
Whoa.
it's fantastic. And then I was very happy to go off of the Whole 30 the first day.
We're all very happy to go
because
off of the
then
Whole
I could
30.
taste chocolate, which I had an unreal craving for during that whole time. It's like I was thinking of chocolate, dreaming of chocolate. So, but I could go on that
if
again.
If nothing else, the Whole 30 teaches you just how much you value things like chocolate.
I know.
To not take them for granted
but
anymore.
But things you used to value that aren't any good for you, when you go off the Whole 30, you don't really want them anymore the way you used to.
Yeah,
it's an
true.
amazing thing that happens.
You refine, they say that you do it to take away your cravings, but I think really what it does is it teaches you to prioritize your cravings.
Yeah.
You're like, I could live without pizza, but in place of pizza, I'll just replace it with chocolate.
Yes.
Pizza chocolate.
Ew. I don't like that combination.
Yummy.
Yes, it affects you, but you're not aware of it till you go off of it, that it affects what you eat.
Yeah.
There's certain things like some kind of delicious bread like you'd get at a restaurant.
Yeah.
But of course I haven't had that in years because no restaurant serves any kind of delicious bread. Huh. But that kind of addiction where you wanted that kind of thing is just not there anymore after going through the Whole 30. So it's really helpful.
Yeah, it's a good way to just be mindful of what things are and how they affect you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So the name of your audio program is what?
It's a still small place, because that's the place where we dwell with God.
Oh, yeah. I've seen you posting the I think you have it in video format going up on Facebook all the time, don't you? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. The still small place where we can hear his voice and we're alone and there's no interruptions and it's just between you and God. It can be at any time of the day. It can be at bedtime or early in the morning when there's no interruptions.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place to be alone with God.
That's awesome.
So that's why I like that name so much.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll throw some links in the show notes. And I'm assuming you can search iTunes and Apple Podcasts for Still Small Place.
Okay.
And people can subscribe and hook in.
And
get to it.
That just makes me happy.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well,
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll make other people happy as well. Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has really been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's really been a blessing for me.
You betcha.
Totally.
And you and I will stay in contact.
Okay, good. Good.
Okay.
That sounds good to me.
Say thank you to all the new adoring fans you have.
Thank you, everybody. And I want you all to be blessed every day.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. And remember, we're going to be playing a short snippet. It's actually a full episode, but it's pretty short there, of Lynn's podcast called Still Small Place. That's right, Still Small Place. You need to go subscribe. You need to get on the list. Add it to your weekly listening on iTunes or podcatchers all over the place. Still Small Place. We're going to be playing a sample at the end of this recording, so stick around. But before then, I want to remind everybody we've got a Patreon page. That's right, this show is supported by listeners just like you. It's the only reason we can keep doing what we're doing around here. That's patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory. And there we'll be putting up more bonus episodes called Ask Baz, as well as some other bonus content we got coming down the pipeline. And if you want to send me a question that you want to hear me answer on Ask Baz, you can send that to thejoyspiracytheory@gmail.com. That's thejoyspiracytheory@gmail.com. I want to thank everybody who's liked the Facebook page. 2,000, baby. Woo! That's right. That means it's worth it. For those of you who have not liked it yet, head over to facebook.com/thejoyspiracytheory. Throw me a like. You'll get updates. You'll get episodes. It's all good stuff. You can also get in contact with me. Thanks to everybody who's left ratings and reviews on iTunes and your podcatchers. There's been some recently. I really appreciate that. And what that does, everybody, when you leave a rating and a review, it tells the robots to give this show to other people. And that's what we want to do. We just want to share the love a little bit. Ratings are stars 1 through 5, and reviews are just putting some words to your feelings. You know, it's important to be able to put language to our feelings. So hopefully you got a 5-star you can throw up there. I want to make a quick announcement. Gons and I, my podcasting partner on some other podcast projects we do, we're starting a Twitch channel. That's right. Go to Twitch and search Canary Cry Radio and follow us. I will consider it a personal favor. Okay, everybody, stick around for that sample of Still Small Place. Be good, y'all.
I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. Lamentations 3:14. There are so many things calling out to us in this life. Things, position, property, and status. There is worldly gain, physical abundance, or monetary blessings available to us from our God at any time. All these things our God can entrust to us at any part of our lives. But when we say, the Lord is my portion, therefore will I wait for him, we then position ourselves correctly to receive all things, an abundance of our Lord's most generous hand. We proclaim God as our giver of all blessings and that we will wait on him. It blesses the very heart of God as it would our earthly Father's heart, seeing us trust and wait upon him. There are no limits to the amount our Heavenly Father will bless a child with, who has learned thankfulness and gratitude and peacefully and happily waits on him to know and to bestow from his great storehouse of blessing. Being his child is truly enough for a son or daughter that has learned to thrive in God's love alone, and God's richest blessings are experienced from that place.